Hey, it's Debbie, and I am going to talk to fellow Canadian today, as I'm actually from Canada originally. Winnipeg, Manitoba is where I was born, and lived in West Vancouver until I was 13 years old. And then moved to Bellevue, Washington. Now I'm in North San Diego. So if you really want to know anything about where I'm from, that is a side trivia about me. But today I'm talking to Alex, who's the CEO of Drink HRW. We're going to talk about hydrogen water and also an anti-aging supplement that they sent me that I'm totally interested in learning more, as I somehow turned a 50 this November 2021. And I am doing everything I can to prepare myself for flipping over to the second half of my life. So let's bring on Alex, as he just joined my waiting room. Hey guys, I've got Alex on the show. He's the CEO of Drink HRW, the hydrogen water tablet company. And we're gonna just dive deep into it. So Alex, thanks for coming on the show, fellow Canadian. Welcome.
Yeah.
So what made you even, come up with the hydrogen water tablet company and start this product to begin with? And we'll kind of explain what it is and what it does and how we can benefit from it.
For sure. I'll give you the short version because I know
Yeah.
we're on a time crunch here. Basically, I got really sick, about 6-7 years ago. It was at a time when I was training 6+ hours a day, 6 times a week with an active recovery day, between martial arts and CrossFit and then hiking and, road work and everything like that. Um, Whatever I had, my inflammation was like 80 times usual. My C-reactive proteins. I had sudden onset narcolepsy, right? I had central nervous system fatigue, like shut down. I couldn't get airtime, like I couldn't jump, like not even an inch off the ground. It was really bizarre, but like my strength was normal. At the same time, my best friend and roommate at the time, he was a guy who like top 10 in triathlons and Spartan races, stuff like that. He missed like 3 weeks of work due to pneumonia and had to go to the hospital a couple times. They didn't know what either of us had, but when the dust settled and whatever virus or whatever I had was gone, I was left with arthritis, and moderate arthritis in my left shoulder, right? So I went the traditional route, which I knew wasn't, a long-term fix, and there is really no long-term fixes available for arthritis right now. And I was taking 1,000 milligrams of naproxen, it was a prescription version, so think Aleve, right? But like a super, super high dose. And I was getting cortisone injections in my shoulder, but I knew that wasn't a forever type thing. So I was just searching for what could regulate the inflammatory process, and hydrogen popped up. I bought this machine that was like $5,000, started, drinking hydrogen water. Um, and then after 8 months or something, I developed a bunch of ulcers. And, from the naproxen, I just stopped and my shoulder froze, like completely froze within a matter of days. Made me frustrated. The hydrogen water wasn't working. I went back to PubMed and started reading more, looking for more things. Hydrogen water popped up several other times, like several more studies, which really frustrated me because it clearly wasn't working for me. But I started looking deeper into the methodology and looking at the concentrations and dosages that were giving the results, looking at the rodent studies and what we're giving to the rodents and doing the conversions to humans. And I said, well, okay, this is the dose that's working. What dose am I getting? Right? Because the salespeople who sold me the machine didn't tell me anything about concentration or dose or anything. Right? So I measured the machine and it was like a negligible amount of hydrogen. I actually had to triple the input to measure any at all. So it was like 0.03 parts per million of hydrogen in the water. For context, our tablets deliver 12, parts per million of hydrogen in the water. So, you know, so much, so much more, right? And uh, like even the minimum dose that's ever been observed to be effective is 0.5, right? So 0.03 to zero point 0.5, it was just never going to be effective. And that's when I just started really experimenting and figuring out ways to do it myself. It started as a DIY project, but as it got bigger, as I hired, a PhD, medicinal chemist to start looking over my work to make sure I wasn't going to win a Darwin Award and kill myself, you know, um, that's when I started thinking, okay, well, this is working for me. Like my shoulder unfroze. I started hand pressing tablets for friends and family. Everyone was reporting like benefits, like, what they were saying. And I'm like, the stuff seems to be working. The science is picking up. I'm making this product that it is 100 times better than anything on the market right now and cheaper. Um, and there seems to be a need for it. So that's when I kind of jumped all in and said, I'm going to commercialize this, right? I'm going to, do this as my next business. And I didn't realize how hard it was going to be because it only took us like 3 weeks to develop, optimal prototypes that we could hand press, making like 10, 50 tablets at one time. But then to go to scale and make millions, we had to go to the drawing board. It took over 2,000 iterative adjustments, over a year, and 15 failed scale-up attempts in manufacturing before we got our first production-ready tablet, which wasn't as good as our prototypes. And now, 4 years later, we're finally better than our prototypes, but we're probably at least 6,000 iterative adjustments, and 4 more years of R&D. So it's ended up being a really big project, but that's the long middle version of how I got into it.
Yeah, everyone has such a great story of their why. So I always like to start each show with asking our guests what's their why, because everyone gives you a purpose, something that happened to you, and create this vision and this motivation to bring something to life. Or same with practitioners, we all have something to do with like why we want to help people get better. So hydrogen tablets, they come in a little tab. You just drop it in your water. So to walk us through how it works and when do we use it and why should we use it as athletes? Because as I was telling you, I'm all focused about helping everyone being fit and healthy from the inside out. And what we're doing, everyone's so focused on performance gains. I want people to focus on longevity. I keep writing lately, I want to focus on when I'm 65, 70 years old, am I still going to be biking and I'm going to be traveling the world and climbing the hills in Tuscany? So what I'm doing now is to prepare me for my older years in life.
I mean, and I feel that because at 35 going on 36, I have a fraction of the ability and fitness as I did, 7 years ago, 10 years ago. I've got arthritis in 11 spots right now. I've already had, surgeries, I need more. And that was all a result of overtraining, injuries, trying to push myself to perform at the highest level I could with no care of what it was going to do to me, later on in life, right? So I've had a big mentality switch, over the last several years regarding that. So basically the tablets, they're using a special non-ionic magnesium. So it's very different from the magnesium you buy off the shelf, right? So it's like the reactive earth metal, but it's not just simple as that. We have a certain breakdown of particle shapes and sizes and acids so that it's safe and, can react properly in the water. When you drop it in, it's splitting the H2 off the O, right, in the H2O. So what we're doing is we're creating this cloud of nanobubbles of hydrogen. Then what ends up happening is the magnesium, and the oxide all react, and then with the acids come together, that leaves just magnesium ions in the water as well. So there's pure hydrogen gas and magnesium ions. Now the benefit there is magnesium ions is what we need in our body. Any magnesium supplement has to break down to be magnesium ions in our stomach. And most of them are very bad at doing this. Like magnesium oxide, which is the most common form you buy at the store, is only about 4% bioavailable. Our reaction in the water does all the work for you so your stomach doesn't have to. So our magnesium is maybe 80 times as potent, to get into your cells in your body as a magnesium oxide. So it looks like it's only 80 milligrams, but that means you're going to get all that magnesium into your body rather than causing GI distress and, just working as a laxative like a lot of magnesium supplements will. So the reason why hydrogen is so beneficial, and it's not just for athletes, it's for longevity too. When you look at our clinical research, it's all over the map, and it's for good reason why it's all over the map. I mean, we've got hundreds of pro athletes taking our product. We've got dozens who officially endorse us, right? But also we have clinical research ongoing looking at parameters of aging itself, right? We've reversed metabolic issues like metabolic syndrome and NAFLD, in clinical trials. We have research on raising alertness after sleep deprivation. We actually have a phase 3 clinical trial underway right now in France for COVID-19. We have actually 3 trials underway right now for COVID-19, right? So there's a wide variety of things hydrogen can help with, and it comes down to evolution, right? Now, hydrogen has played an integral role, in the development of our planet, of all life, of our atmosphere. Even our mitochondria evolved from, an organelle that was hydrogen dependent. So it used hydrogen as its fuel source, right? That's how our mitochondria, evolved, right? So hydrogen was integral in the evolution of our mitochondria. Now, within our body, our microbiome, we have hydrogen producing bacteria and hydrogen consuming bacteria, right? So hydrogen is in our bodies at all times, at basal levels. Now, it at first didn't make sense. We at first thought hydrogen played no role in physiology. It was just there and it was inert, did nothing. Now we're realizing that's really not true. And there's 2 different things. Endogenous hydrogen, is very important, what we produce in our body, but exogenous hydrogen is also very important. There could be multiple reasons for that. The oldest water sources we've ever found on the planet, one was on the Canadian, shield, billions of years old. All these ancient waters we're finding have dissolved hydrogen gas in them, right? Significant levels. But on top of that, if you think about how we evolved through the Paleo period, our hunter-gatherer stage, we would have had intermittent access to different food sources, right? There would have been days we didn't eat, right? So we would have been generating no hydrogen at all, because that's how we generate hydrogen in our body, is breakdown of carbohydrates in our small intestine. Bacteria breaks down, these carbs, and it releases hydrogen gas. So there would have been days where we'd have no hydrogen. Then there were days where we might have found a big source of fruit or grains or something like that, and have this large access, of hydrogen being produced. Now we start looking at the research. Well, if you give a continuous dose of hydrogen, even if it's super high, if we give hydrogen to say a mouse 24/7, there are no health benefits. Now, if we give an intermittent, acute, high dose of hydrogen, we see all these benefits, right? There's been, studies that explored both routes. We look at these small acute doses, and we'll see that your cellular concentrations of hydrogen can double or more in a short amount of time. They might only double for 5 minutes or 30 minutes or an hour, but after that, we see all these changes in cell signaling, genetic expression, right? All these cellular communications change. It's also very interesting that when we apply hydrogen gas to healthy cells, not very much happens. Very little happens. Now, if we damage these cells, then we see huge changes. And it's not as simple as hydrogen is working, say, as like an antioxidant or an anti-inflammatory, because it's not. We'll see studies where hydrogen is, it's basically activating something called our NRF2 pathway, and it's raising our own production of antioxidants like glutathione, SOD, right, catalase. Then other studies where it's actually raising oxidative stress. But in both scenarios, it's leading to something called the homeostasis of our redox stats, right? So that's kind of the harmony between our oxidative stress and our antioxidant system. Now, we need oxidative stress in our body. Before we thought they were just damaging, right? But now we know certain, oxidative and nitrosative stressors are super important, right? H2O2 is super important. I mean, nitric oxide is a free radical in oxidative or a nitrosative stress, and the discovery of its role in the body, in vasodilation and all these things, won a Nobel Prize, right? So we know we need these stresses in our cells. We just need the harmony, right, between, the oxidative stress and the antioxidants. It's the same thing with inflammation, right? We think of inflammation as bad. Well, no, acute inflammation is part of our immune system, right? If you aren't producing inflammation, you're going to get really sick if something happens to you, or you're not going to be protected if you get injured. It's chronic elevated inflammation, which is a problem. Hydrogen has shown both to lower or raise inflammation depending on the model, again, driving towards basically an optimal inflammatory response, right? It's done the same thing with autophagy, right? In several models, it's activated autophagy for beneficial results. In other models, like models of, say, heart failure, it's blunted autophagy, which would have been very bad after someone had a heart attack, right? So I've started thinking about hydrogen as sort of kind of like a supervisor or regulator of our cellular communication, right? I give the analogy, say you have a factory and you're making shoes, and you have one line that's making shoelaces, another line that's making the soles, another line making the insoles, another line, making the tongue, another making, the outer shell of the shoe. Well, those lines all have to operate in harmony, right? Even though you could say the line making shoelaces is good, if you're making too many shoelaces, they start to pile up and create trash and junk, right? There's no harmony on the line. And that's the same thing with so many functions in our body, right? They're good or bad depending on the harmony between all the other functions. And hydrogen seems to be coming in like a supervisor and saying, hey, slow down that line, speed up that line, right? And getting everything to work together harmoniously.
That's with the whole body. I was, right, and to share that it's this harmony, as you're saying, it's this orchestra, and everyone has to be playing in sync to create this optimal sound, optimal performance. And it's that Goldilocks effect for almost everything in our body. Not too much, not too little, just that right amount, create that positive effect. And so many times everyone thinks more is better. If this is good for me, I need more. And then, say too much of something can be toxic, too little is deficiency. It's just what's the right amount.
We see that all the time with vitamins. You know what I mean? Like, you can get the same side effects from vitamin toxicity as you do from deficiency, right? From overdosing, right? Mm-hmm. For a lot of different vitamins. For antioxidants, people think antioxidants are good for you. Well, all of the studies in humans, large scale studies, most of them were stop dead, right? Like just cut off, stop recruiting people, because we started finding out that high dose antioxidant therapy not only doesn't work, it causes harm, right? It increases all cause mortality. It increases risk of cancer. It interferes with cancer treatments, right? And that's, before we really started to understand that these stressors in our body, these oxidative and nitrosative stressors, play a role. They're important, right? So when we're just flooding our body with all these, antioxidants that we take, in high doses, it's doing two things. It's shutting down our body's own production of antioxidants, right? Which are usually more effective, and it's getting rid of a lot of the good oxidative and nitrosative stressors, which play a role. And most of them are completely ineffective at getting rid of the really bad damaging guys like the hydroxyl radical and peroxynitrite, right? That don't have a role, that are just causing damage, right? So, we can chalk that up to marketing, right? Marketing companies tend to fall to what's the easiest thing to say? What have other companies said? Well, other companies say, antioxidants are good, so we're going to say ours is the most powerful and it's a better antioxidant and you get more of it. And that comes down to marketing and incorrect perception, not what's good for the user.
Yeah. And it's timing of things too. People always think, yeah, I'm creating oxidative stress. Maybe they don't know when you exercise, especially if you're
Yeah.
going, longer than 45 minutes, you're creating more oxidative stress. And so what do you do to improve that damage you're putting on your body with excessive exercise? Is also you read antioxidants, but it's not right after you work out, because you just said you want your own body's natural production of antioxidants to help that process. But then, if it's later in the evening before bed, or when you take them, or do you need them or not?
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, hydrogen and exercise are both things we've evolved to expect and we've adapted to, right? They're stressors which makes us stronger. It's something called hormesis, right? And you look at exercise. If you don't exercise at all, right, there's all these negative consequences, right? Our body becomes not harmonious. If you exercise too much, there's the same negative consequences, right? Because you're not giving your body time to adapt and grow stronger. It's stress, 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 right? That is similar to hydrogen. If you take it all the time, say all you drink is hydrogen water, you inhale it all day long, you know, it's not only not beneficial, it's probably harmful, right? Whereas taking these intermittent blasts is what's helpful. Now, what we've seen both in animal and human research is taking hydrogen with exercise actually, blunts the damages while potentiating the results, right? So in well-controlled rodent research, it'll show giving hydrogen during exercise is acutely raising oxidative stress. So it's as if they exercise harder than they did. However, it's then reversing and getting back to homeostasis faster than exercise alone. So it's like you got more out of your workout and recovered quick.
So the recovery, the pair is more efficient and faster to respond with the hydrogen water during workout.
Not per se muscle growth or
Yeah.
anything like that. I'm talking
Yeah.
just about, say, regulation of redox, inflammatory
So,
response, all this stuff. Like within in our cellular communications, like the combo of hydrogen and exercise seem to work complementary to each other.
so are you saying if people, hopefully go try this out, do we take it before workout, during, or is it just like when you wake up in the morning, we should have it afterwards? What are you
So I've
finding
got
works best?
different dosing protocols, that I recommend. Days I exercise, I do it right before I exercise. Other days I might do it first thing in the morning on an empty stomach. Other people like doing it, say, early mid-afternoon if they're feeling a lull. We've got a couple clinical trials on raising alertness after sleep deprivation. Actually, one that's under peer review right now was hydrogen versus caffeine, that showed hydrogen actually had a more robust effect on brain metabolism than caffeine did using fMRI. So that was pretty interesting to see.
Yeah.
One thing that's important is I think that we need to change our routine
Yes.
every 3 to 6 months. Just like exercise.
Seasonally.
If you do the same exercise every day forever, it stops being exercise, right? Your body
I
adapts.
found that years ago. I was training for Ironman, and like, who would even know I'm working out 15, 20 hours a week? My body did it for so many years. It didn't change a thing.
Yep. So I typically like setting a routine for myself with hydrogen, and I'll do it for 3 to 6 months, and then I'll wash out for a week, don't take any, and then I change my routine,
Good.
right? Take it at
Yeah.
a different dose at a different time of day.
Yeah. I always think of it as working out as muscle confusion, just mixing things up all the time. Same with your routine of supplements and your timing and everything is just
Well,
good. I think on off like coffee.
I've talked with a bunch of sports researchers on stuff like that. So it's super, super, interesting. Like something like CrossFit is probably better for you to have a wide range of physical abilities, but really bad for elite level training, right? Because it's taking away from that activity. Whereas something like, say, an Ironman athlete or a runner or a cyclist is going to become elite doing that exercise, but that isn't going to transfer properly to other exercise.
Yeah.
Like, my wife, for her age group, she won the BC Provincials Marathon in 2019. So she's a standing champion right now.
Nice.
She's training for an Ironman. I could not keep up with her for running for 1 minute. Like there's no way, right? However, on a long walk or snowshoeing, she can't keep up with me, right?
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
Specific.
I couldn't finish a marathon if my life depended on it, right? But
Yeah.
her, endurance training, in swimming, biking, and running has not carried over to her having stamina for a long walk or snowshoeing.
Interesting. Yeah. So it's good to seasonally, I think, especially with Ironman people, triathletes or whatever sport you do, to not race. Like I know people do Ironmans every year for years. And I started after I had my health breakdown from training and living life
Yeah.
too fast paced, that I thought, I'm like, why don't people do it every other year? Give your body time to recover, do other sports, other strength training, and get into that, and then go back to endurance. And then that probably is better on your aging process than hammering yourself every year.
Yeah, it's super interesting. We're always curious because, I mean, say with something like hiking, if we're going uphill, she's 10 times better than faster. You know what I mean? Like, it's just really interesting how some of these elite trainings lead to huge, improvements in some areas and
Yeah.
complete deficiencies, in others. So it's quite interesting to me.
So the benefits of doing the tablets, are great. And then how do people know if it's doing anything? What should they, like you said, if people are sleep deprived or brain function,
Yeah.
and people are all kind of worried about, if they're fasting to take it or not fat, all those little rules people have not to
Yeah.
have anything.
Um, our strongest evidence is for metabolic, but that's going to take a month, 2, 3 months to start seeing the benefit. So people aren't going to get an experiential result. Our one study was 6 months, 60 participant, double-blind, placebo-controlled, and we basically reversed metabolic syndrome. It was affected 18 of 20 parameters, right? Our other, we had another study on non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. It's very similar to metabolic syndrome. They're both pre-diabetic states. Both of them, about 1 in 3, Americans, upwards of 40%, have either metabolic syndrome, NAFLD, or both, right? So they're very rampant through the population.
Correlate that with COVID and how many people have died. It's sad.
Exactly, because they're some of the biggest risk factors of serious cases of COVID. So with that study on NAFLD, it was just 28 days, right? Double-blind, placebo-controlled crossover. But we saw a significant improvement in liver fat accumulation, a drop in AST of 10%, and an improvement of insulin sensitivity by 11%. Right.
Wow.
And so we have a replication study that's under data review right now. We don't know if it worked or it didn't. We're confident it did though. Those are long-term benefits that people start seeing, with their metabolism.
Is that taking it once a day though? Sorry to interrupt.
Twice a day.
Twice a day. Okay.
Most of them are twice a day. Yeah. 2 or 3 times a day. Now, for immediate benefits, we tend to hear our biggest, testimonials are sleep, right? Like improved sleep outcomes, it improved, wakefulness when you're tired, right? We hear a lot on reduced hangovers. We have a little study that's under manuscript prep under hangovers that saw a good result. We hear athletes and it's interesting. We've given it to some like endurance clubs, and it seems that the athletes, and as someone who's done Ironmans yourself, you probably know there's some endurance athletes that start fast and try to hold pace, and slow down over the race, and there's others that know their pace and try and keep their pace, the entire race. So the people who know their pace and try and keep their pace don't seem to report any benefits. Whereas the people who start fast and try and hold pace say they get incredible improvements in time, right? Because their bodies just hold stronger. We hear this a lot, with MMA fighters and CrossFitters, which are 2 of our biggest audiences that endorse us, because those are activities where you aren't trying to keep a steady pace, where you're trying to go balls to the wall. In MMA, you're trying to break the other person, right? Trying to outpace them, in CrossFit, you're trying to do as much as possible. Those guys and girls tend to say they can hold paces way longer. They're way fresher. They have way more in the tank, right? So we hear that, but universally we hear reduced muscle soreness. And we have one clinical trial published using our hydrogen bath tablets that after one bath significantly reduced delayed onset muscle soreness, both subjectively and by some markers.
So that should help for people as myself. As I said, I'm focused on, creating less damage for my workouts. And I know training more than 45 minutes an hour is not healthy for me, but endurance athletes, we are probably going to do that and work out maybe twice a day and do longer workouts on the weekend. So how to mitigate that damage and to work on faster recovery repair, but also, long-term looking ahead, not creating more cellular damage in the future. So this would be something good to implement into your toolbox for how to mitigate damage from workouts, kind of preventative measures.
Yeah, exactly. Like both, it's going to be helping with the health aspect, mitigating, damage from overtraining, but also, depending on how you train and recover, it can improve your performance as well and speed up your recovery. So you can actually train more without doing damage, right? Which will slowly mean you're going to be performing better as well. If your muscles are recovering faster, if you're not as sore, you're going to be able to get in more training.
Yeah, because I know, what I used to do, I could get away with it for so many years, training 10 of hours a week and already doing an active, busy job and not sleeping enough and all that stuff, as you said, it kind of catches up with you. And I think people think they're superheroes for a while, but then you kind of hit the wall or have adrenal exhaustion, as I had in 2013, starting all these other symptoms come up that you don't realize are part of living life as a race. And so what can we do to take responsibility and ownership of our health now and self-care? So that's kind of my purpose and my mission, help people create awareness, do stuff now like this, so you're not screwed up down the road and can't do what you love to do.
Yeah, no, if I tried to do a day's worth of my workout that I did, 6-7 years ago today, I think I'd be in bed for a week.
Yes, I know, right? I mean, it's just, and I hate blaming the aging process. I think people use that as an excuse. I don't think it's because I'm getting older. It's because of what I'm doing to create imbalance and loss of homeostasis to our body, not having that hormesis, that, acute stress instead of this chronic stress that seems to be accumulate through all different sources, external and internally.
And I'm very curious if in both my case and my best friend and former roommate's case, if we got so sick from whatever hit us because we were both overtraining so much.
Yeah.
I was training 6 to 8 hours a day. He was working construction all day long and then going and training 2 to 4 hours in the evening.
Yeah.
Right. So both of us were overtraining so much that we might have been hit by, a virus that wasn't that bad, but our bodies were so depleted. You see that sometimes in high level athletes that are training 8 hours a day, that guys get tested and they have the testosterone levels of an 80-year-old man because their body's just completely shut down.
We call it metabolic chaos. You're creating, imbalances every system of your body, breakdown and burnout, right?
Yeah, and you see that in guys in their 20s and guys who haven't used steroids, right? They're just overtrained, right? So they're fatigued, their hormones are off, right? Like all of this stuff is going on. So, I wouldn't want to train like I did 7 years ago because it wasn't good for me. Sorry, my
Kitty cat. So I think it's another thing I want to dive into before we run out of time today is your other supplement, because as I said, I'm so focused on improving the aging process and mitochondria damage that we're creating, and looking at chronic stress and how it actually, there's theories of the cell danger response, and the mitochondria is really a focus for me that I think we should be more focused on optimizing and methylation cycle and all what's going on inside. So talk about the other product you guys were launching too, the longevity one.
Okay, so are you talking about the Ageless Defense?
Yes.
Okay, so Ageless Defense, we launched that because there was a complete deficiency on the market of anything that deals with advanced glycation and product crossing, right? So
Ages, for
Ages,
short,
exactly,
AGES.
right? So we myself and with the help of my partner, Dr. Holland, we spent about 16 months or something looking at all the natural compounds that have shown to either stop various ages from forming, break certain ages, and the most prevalent age, glucosamine, can't be broken as of yet. So all we can do is stop it from forming, or mitigate the damages in them. So we came up with this like master formula, in the right doses and ingredients that we made Ageless Defense. Now, what we did first is, it's an unpublished internal study with friends and family. Um, we gave it to myself and 19 other people, and we're all testing it and just monitoring ourselves. Across the board, it lowered blood pressure and blood sugar, right? First and foremost, we're like, okay, that this has some rationale that it could be working for ages. Certainly, there's evidence suggesting that it is doing this with ages. So, what ages are for your audience, if they're not familiar, there are basically these bonds that form between proteins, in our body, between our cells and our collagen, like that, proteins, and there's sugar, right? That basically stiffen everything up. So basically, the tissues in our body say start off, they're strong, malleable, like a brand new set of sheets, right? But after time, as all these sugars start accumulating in our body, uh, it's like that set of sheets has been starched out, so it's stiff, can't be folded properly, tears easily, all these things. Now we accumulate these, cross links all the time, right? And it's not just from eating carbs, right? It's from cooking proteins or fats, right? So we can get ages that form within our body, right, through having too high of blood sugar, or ones that we eat, from cooking meat and fat, or carbs, right? Basically cooking anything. The browning of a steak, those are ages, right? The browning of a bread, those are ages, right? We can even inhale them from inhaling smoke in the air, right? So there's no way to avoid ages, right? You cannot change your diet and say, I'm not getting ages. No matter what, you're getting ages in various amounts. I mean, I guess you could eat only raw meat and raw food, which could have its own negative consequences itself, but then you're still inhaling ages from smoke in the air, right? So all we can do is kind of fight against them. Now, ages are one of those things that they slowly build up over your life, and then it's too late. Vascular stiffening, can lead to neurodegenerative diseases, to diabetes, to heart disease, to all these things. It's what causes wrinkles in your face. Combination of ages breaking down collagen and then UV is what causes wrinkles itself, right? So for all these reasons, I mean, it could be a contributing factor in sarcopenia, makes your muscles easier to tear, right? And weaker and more frail. So ages are super destructive. They happen all the time. They're going to happen. Ageless Defense will not stop all of them from occurring, right? But they're, hypothetically, it's going to be slowing down, them accumulating and stopping some of their consequences. Like basically, ages contribute to shortening telomeres. They contribute to increased inflammation. They contribute to increased oxidative stress, and it all happens in this vicious circle. As one of them starts falling apart, it goes around in a circle, and everything starts getting dysregulated. So we currently have a clinical trial underway looking to explore some of the things we saw in our internal study. We've continued to get great feedback from consumers self-monitoring themselves on Ageless Defense. We're looking to validate this with, a third-party independent university that's studying it. Then we're going to go deeper into the research. We're really big on research. I mean, I don't think I touched base on this enough, but In 4 years of being commercial with the hydrogen tablets, we have 7 clinical trials published. We have 3 case studies, 1 preclinical trial. We have 15 other clinical trials that are underway at various stages. We're working with 12 universities across the world. We have 4 additional preclinical research programs ranging on, various issues from disease models to improve sleep. There's so much research underway and coming out, and in all cases, we aren't controlling this research. These are universities doing the research. We will donate product. Sometimes we donate funding to strengthen the study, but in all cases, the universities have final, say on what the protocol is and final decision on if they publish results.
Well, that's good. So it's not influenced by the people that created it.
Yeah.
It's natural. Good.
So we believe in free, open, fair science.
Yeah, I think it's great. Test it out. And if people kind of biohacker world, if you're doing a continuous glucose monitor and like tracking it that way, have you done that? And then like an Oura ring to monitor sleep and recovery, repair readiness. Have you kind of done those kind of simple biomarkers that people can self-test and measure?
I mean, we get lots of feedback from people on their Oura rings. Like actually, one of our preclinical programs is at a top 10 university in the United States, and they have their sleep lab looking at mice, and it was because one of the researchers noticed some pretty significant and immediate changes in his own sleep when he started drinking the hydrogen water. So we ended up developing a partnership. They've got a bunch of research that's close to being ready to start publishing and showing really strong results. But we actually have another clinical trial that's currently underway using Oura rings in professional MMA fighters, looking at sleep outcomes in the athletes, then some other subjective markers like muscle soreness and stuff like that. And we have 3 other clinical trials incorporating sleep questionnaires, right?
Okay.
So we're looking big on sleep. We get constant feedback, on sleep. Actually, our small little hangover study used Oura rings also, and we saw some pretty significant results in, the hangover questionnaire results. It was just a small little pilot, but also in some of the sleep data for the high alcohol group, right? So
yeah. I think sleep is so essential. I've been trying to share articles lately and blog about it and trying to do some podcasts on sleep. It just seems like it makes everything else better. So I call it the holistic method. There's 8 elements to transforming the whole you from the inside out to be fit and healthy. And that's not just exercise, nutrition, but sleep and stress management, movement throughout the day. That's your sunrise, sunset, daylight, sun exposure, but also digestion and gut health, hydration. And my 8th one is happiness, gratitude, play, laughter. And I think all these elements are so important because if one is off, they're all off. But the biggest one, if you had to pick one, I think it's sleep, because that's where your body recovers, repairs, detoxification, the internal housekeeping service comes along and just makes you feel better.
Especially for our brain too, right? Like our lymphatic system activation, that's kind of like our garbage removal brain. That's what's activated during sleep, specifically during REM sleep, right? So, if you aren't getting good sleep, or if you're impairing your REM sleep by being intoxicated or taking like sleep meds, it's impacting and shutting down the system that removes all the garbage from your
the drainage. Yeah.
I'm a big believer in no alarms. So
yeah, me too. Thanks to COVID, I don't have to have an alarm.
Well, thanks to working at home, I have to, unless like I have an early morning, like call, like which is maybe once every week or something. Like there's one that I have to set an alarm for. Yes. But most days I go to sleep when I'm tired and wake up naturally. So nice. I'm a big believer in that, right? Yeah. I track my Oura ring data.
I just got my Oura ring last week, so it's all new experiment. I've wanted one for whenever they started 3 years ago, and we finally got one.
And then we've got lots of articles I've written. I've written about 500,000 words of content on our website.
Wow.
So I've done like retrospective analysis of my own sleep with fasting, for instance.
Oh, cool. So that's what I want to write about.
Everything. I can, send you links and stuff to look at this stuff. And one last thing to touch base on, you mentioned, the gut, the microbiome. It's again so critical. And like I said, in our microbiome, we have hydrogen producing bacteria and hydrogen consuming bacteria.
Mm-hmm.
And research across multiple animals, including a couple studies in humans, have all shown that drinking hydrogen water positively impacts the microbiome. So that could be one of the big reasons for some of the benefits we're seeing.
Well, and that's why I've done many podcasts on lab testing and microbiome with Karan. We've done like 5 episodes on why you should test and not guess, because they have a lab test, BiomeFX, which you can test out your microbiome. There's also GI Map we've done some work with. But, I didn't have key bacteria strains like Akkermansia. I wasn't even detected. And that's a key one that you need for mitochondria or methylation metabolism. It's the other M word. And it's so interesting that you think you're so healthy, but what I want to keep writing and sharing about, like, you could do so much better. If this is how you settle, like, this is great. When I don't even have these key things in my body, and I found I had mold toxicity last year, it's like, oh my God, I'm settling. There's so much more potential for me. But you don't know unless you test out things and like take hydrogen water, use your Oura ring and get that data, collect those clues, and then figure out how to adjust things so you're optimizing yourself. And so many people don't use that data and take advantage.
I'm going to shout out to a not-for-profit I'm starting. It's not ready, but you can go to the website myjourney.science. And there's a number of us, we've got a number of PhDs and MDs on the advisory board. We're basically, what we're doing is we're creating templates for people to do their own N1 test.
Love it.
We're trying to teach tutorials to show why it's important to biohack, but to do it intelligently. You only ever want to try one thing at a time, right?
So you got to test to be able to test.
10 different changes, and then they don't know if something helped or hurt them, right?
Yes.
So this is just basically teaching the basics of science, but then giving these templates that say, okay, I want to try this. And this is a template that it recommends to record outcomes. Now, those outcomes won't be, those outcomes will be tracked. So people will be able to see, well, X therapy worked in 70% of people, but in 10% of people it had side effects, because there's a complete lack of research on a lot of these, biohacking tools, a lot of supplements, a lot of, medical devices, a lot of biohacking devices. We not only don't know if they work, we don't know if they have side effects. We don't know how often they work. We don't know what situations they work, right? I mean, even with drugs that go through sometimes infinitely more testing than supplements, we have not enough post-market analysis to know what percentage of people are they working, when are their side effects. Researchers are starting to do things like scour Twitter and Reddit, looking for side effects on supplements and drugs. We're trying to basically put this in one resource where we start tracking, and looking things. Then completely optional, people would be able to upload their genetic results, right? Their DNA results.
I was going to say genetics.
Exactly. And this would only be available upon consent, if you agree to give it, and only to people from public research universities that want to say, hey, listen, it looks like this works in 60% of people. Can we analyze the genetic reports to see if there's some allele or variant that makes someone susceptible or not susceptible to this, supplement or diet or anything like that? Because, genetic responder studies cost millions of dollars, right? So we're looking to help the research community by crowdsourcing this data. We think that, there are hundreds of millions, if not billions of people that use various wearable technology. This is such a wealth of information, and we need this information to be utilized so that we can advance our understanding of physiology and advance our understanding of personalized medicine, right? And we can only do that with more information. It sounds counterintuitive, but the only way that we can get better personalized medicine is with more general information from a large population.
Yeah, I think people kind of get weird about that. I know with genetics, I always ask my clients, do 23andMe or Ancestry DNA, and then we can upload it to Genetic Genie, and you can donate money and you can get so much information, or use DNA Fit, or if you can, spend more, do strategy. And I think so many people freak out about, people are selling their data, even Oura Ring. I know neurohackers, they had an article in that too, that they didn't want to use Oura rings anymore because they're selling their information. People kind of get worried about that. But I always feel like, well, how are they going to know anything about genetics if we don't share our genetic reports?
Exactly. It's that kind of, to me, I mean, and I'm writing a book on, how a lot of these systems, from research to media to marketing to everything to big data, is really killing truth,
Mm.
right now. But all of these things can either be great or harmful depending on execution, right? So data gathering is not inherently bad. It can be great. It's how it's used, right? And that's what we need to think about critically, right? How is this data being used, right?
Yeah.
Is it being used to create an echo chamber so that you hate your neighbor? Or is it being used so that we can advance healthcare and make everyone happier and healthier?
Yeah.
How is this being used?
True. Good. Well, we're running out of time, but if we can finish up, just kind of, if we can summarize the protocol usage for the hydrogen tablets and the Ageless Defense, when we should take them, and
Sure. So
based
the
on it.
Ageless Defense is easy. Take either 4 to 8 of them per day, 4 at once with a meal, right?
Okay.
Make sure you take it with a meal, all right? For the hydrogen water, it really depends on the individual. Some people like taking first thing in the morning on an empty stomach. That's a good protocol. Um, One of my pending patents involves hydrogen creates a dense foam with various polysaccharides, right?
Mm.
So, if you eat it with a big meal full of carbohydrates, you're actually getting more of a continuous dose rather than acute dose. So don't eat it with a big meal of carbohydrates. Uh, for athletes, try and take it 10 minutes before you train, right? Or for people working in an office or people who say have lunch and get drowsy after lunch, try and take it like 1, 2 p.m. when you're feeling drowsy, right? This is some of our biggest anecdotes that it really wakes you up in that situation, and we have clinical evidence on this too. And finally, if you're going to go, you know, go out drinking, like, or put in some substances that are going to make you feel bad the next day, take it before you go to bed.
Mm. Good. Yeah, I think it's good to experiment, and then when to take them. And the other thing I was going to ask, you put the you fill water, filtered water, and then dump the tablet in, or is there like procedures how to do it? And then you have to drink it
Yeah,
within a certain amount of time. If you let it sit for hours, it's not as good. What's
exactly. So basically, you want to drink it as fast as you can, right?
after it
So
dissolved, the
yeah,
tablet dissolved?
so put it in anywhere from 8 to 17 ounces of water. We recommend room temperature water. You don't want ice cold water. It'll slow down the reaction and disintegration of the tablet. So also it's easier to drink room temperature water. It's closer to our body temperature, so it's easier to slam it down. This is not a beverage that you sip over like an hour or something like that. You want to wait until the tablet rises to the surface, breaks apart, and then drink it as quickly as you can. So
Mm.
some people, like a lot of our clinical trials say in COVID and the elderly, they do 8 ounces of water, 250, because that's what they find older people are able to drink in one gulp, 250. Personally, I only ever do 500 to 750, so kind of like 16 to 24 ounces. But I can easily guzzle a liter, right? So guzzling 750 milliliters, like, it is no issue. Like, or for Americans, I can easily guzzle 32 ounces, without taking a breath.
Wow.
So I
Is
do
that
six.
from your previous life of drinking alcohol as a Canadian? Guzzle 32. Kidding. So I think it's just great to figure out how to use it and why and the benefits of it. So hopefully everyone got some tips. And where can they learn more and look at the research studies if they're into kind of getting to the
drinkhRW.com.
Okay.
We have a big page for hydrogen water, everything hydrogen water, from all the research to basic questions and stuff. But then if people sign up for our newsletter, not only do we have about 500,000 words of content so far in the last 2 years. A big chunk of it's by me, but we also have multiple guest writers, and they're all either PhDs or MDs, right? They're writing about a lot of important topics that people are interested in, from the benefits and shortcomings, so like genetic testing and microbiome testing, like where we have to go, in all these directions. right? So we put out some really good, well cited and referenced, articles.
That's great. Well, I'm excited to, keep taking it myself. I've been, enjoying it. It actually tastes good too. And I like fizzy water, and I love to do anything for the aging process with this Ageless Defense. So it just has all the ingredients that I always read about that we need. So I was grateful for that to test out. So we'll put everything in the show notes so you guys can try it yourself and see what you think. And we'll follow you guys along on social media. You have Instagram and Facebook links, and just share everything there.
At HRW for both of them.
Okay, good. Well, thank you so much for your time today and sharing your knowledge and your passion and your purpose.
No problem. Thanks again for having me.